your sourdough starter in the door of the fridge. And if it's been very long, when you open it, it's going to have this black hooch on it. This has been a while. It's been like 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. So you're just going to pour that hooch off. It's like an alcoholic stuff that forms. And then we're going to feed what's left. So I poured off the hooch, and I'm going to pour all of this starter into a container so I can get it activated. And this is the first step in making the bread, is you've got to feed the starter and get it going again. So it doesn't matter if I leave some in there because I'm just going to put it back, the excess. So that's what it looks like. There's still a little bit of hooch on there. That's okay. Then you're just going to add some water, some. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much, even though they tell you to measure and everything, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now I've got some water in there, and I'm going to add some flour. The point here is just to feed it and get it going again. So the thickness you're wanting it to be is kind of like you're making muffins or like mashed potatoes or something. Doesn't really matter how exacting it is. You're just trying to give the starter something to eat. So I like a little thicker than that. I like it probably more like mashed potatoes. Okay, that's it. Now, there's what additional. So I had my starter, I added water, I added flour, got it to this consistency. Now it's just going to sit there for some amount of hours. It can be, since my starter had been like probably maybe 3 weeks since I've used it, then it's going to probably take all day to get going again. So I'm just going to cover it, and then I'll come back in, I don't know, 4 hours, 6 hours or whatever, and take a look at it. What I'm waiting for is it's going to bubble up and get bubbles in it and be ready to use to make bread. It's been 4 hours, and I'm just taking a look at the starter to see if it's activated. And it is not. You can see a bubble forming here, but if it was activated, it would have kind of risen into a dome with bubbles all over. So I'm just going to put the timer on for 4 more hours. If you've used your starter within the past week or week and a half, 4 hours is probably enough. But since I left mine 2 to 3 weeks, it's going to take longer to activate. It might even take till tomorrow. But I'm just leaving it on the counter, and we'll check it every 4 hours. So this has been sitting out on the counter now for about 9 hours. And you can see that it's starting to get bubbles in it, right there and elsewhere. And it's kind of risen up and domed. So now to check that the starter's ready, you just get a cup of water like this. And I'm just going to take a spoonful of the starter, and I'm just going to drop it into this cup. If it floats, that means the starter's ready, and you can see it floating in there. If it drops to the bottom, then it's not ready, and you got to give it a little more time. As you can see in here where the starter is, it's like I could deflate it. It's like bubbling, and so this starter's ready to go, and I can bake now. What we're going to do is we're going to pour back some starter into this jar. And that will become the next time we start. And because it's been fed, it's ready just to put back into the refrigerator. I always keep about that much. You can seal the lid, it doesn't matter. Just have about that much in a jar. And then without measuring, the rest of this is going to go in the bowl, and I'm going to add the flour to make the bread. What we're going to put 7.5 cups of water into this big bowl. If you're using just white flour, just use 7 because the wheat absorbs the water. So that's 7.5 cups.
Does that have to be warm or cold? Or?
Just, it doesn't matter, just out of tap. Cool, I guess. I haven't seen it makes any difference at all. And then I'm going to take an undisclosed amount, whatever starter, and just dump it in here. And it will float because we just tested it. I guess if it was deeper, it'd float better. Anyway, okay, so that's the start of it. Now we start adding flour. I'm going to add 17 cups of freshly ground, if you have it, whole wheat flour. You can do a combination. I usually do about 1/3 of the turkey red wheat and 2/3 of the Montana white. So just keep going until you have 17 cups of flour. This is a Danish dough hook, which makes it really easy to mix, but you can use anything, spoon, whatever. The reason it doesn't matter how much starter we put in there was because it's going to grow and spread and infect the whole dough, so it doesn't have to be a specific amount. Your flour, this is freshly ground, so it's really fluffy. If you're getting it out of a bag, you're going to need to fluff it first, but you just put it in it and level it like this. You don't want to pack it down or anything, or you just scoop and level it.
Nine cups of flour in here.
So when you're mixing it, it will start to look kind of like what they describe it as a shaggy dough. It's not smooth, it's just kind of rough. As soon as you got it mixed, stop. And that's enough. All right, and now what you're going to do is put a cloth or lid over it for 45 minutes, if it's whole wheat, and a half an hour if it's white flour. And that just gives it a chance to absorb the liquid. So now that's covered, and I'm going to put 1/2 cup of water into a cup and add 4 tablespoons of salt. And this is going to be added after all the water gets absorbed. So in 45 minutes. And while you're doing it now, 3, 4. So 4 tablespoons salt in 1/2 cup of water. And while you're doing it now is you want to just get that salt to dissolve, so you're making some ultra salty water. So just set this all aside for 45 minutes. Okay, so now it's been 45 minutes and the dough has absorbed the water. And so we're going to take the 1/2 cup of water with 4 tablespoons of salt, and I just get my hands wet and make some holes, and then just dump the salt in. And then you're just going to mix it in so you don't have any salty spots. When you feel like you've thoroughly mixed it in enough, then you're going to do what is called folding the dough. So with a wet hand, you reach underneath and you get the dough and you just pull it straight up and fold it over on itself. And then you turn the bowl and you do that again. You just pull the dough up and fold it over on itself. And if you just roll the bowl around 4 times and do that, that's considered one folding. So you put the lid back on, you put your timer on a half hour or an hour, and you fold it again. So once you folded it 3 times, you just leave your bread on the counter with the slit on for 8 to 12 hours. And it will do its rising and mixing the starter through all the dough. If you want to put it in the fridge, you can. It can stay up there up to 18 hours, or you can put it in a cold, not freezing garage. Or I just leave it on the counter, and in the morning, we'll shape it and bake it. One more time, I'm going to get my hands wet and just reach under and pull it straight up and fold it over. And as you do this, it builds the gluten and it will make it rise higher. Okay, so after you've folded it, just put the lid back on and wait an hour or so to fold it again. Clean your cupboard really well and then get it wet. It's going to turn out the dough. So here's how it looks after it's set on the counter overnight. So I have a wet counter and I have wet hands. And I'm just going to turn this out onto it. And then I have this big mass of dough. This is going to be, this will make 4 bowls or 4 big round loaves. Stop it, will you? So I wet my knife and I'm just going to cut this dough into 4 different pieces so that it can be the 4 finished bowls. So there's 1 and 2. Then from here, I'm just going to cover these with a cloth and give them a half an hour to rest. Okay, so now these have had a half hour rest and they're ready to shape. So these are going to be the Dutch ovens that I use to bake them in. And I found 4 containers that resemble the size of that Dutch oven. I just use anything I have. It doesn't have to be exact. So so what I do now is, in order to shape it, I'm going to coat it with some, I'm going to use parchment paper to foil it on. So, okay, so first I want to get my hands wet. And then I'm going to take the dough and spread it out into a long rectangle, kind of pulling on it. And then I'm going to fold it like a letter into thirds. And then I'm just going to roll that up. And when I get it all rolled up, I start to try to shape it into a bowl. You want to make sure that this part is tucked in good. Okay, so that looks like pretty much like a round bowl. So I take it and I dip it into the sesame until it's coated. And I lay it on the parchment paper. And that goes right into one of these containers. And I just leave it in there to rise. It can take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to rise. And then I'm just going to cover that, all 4 of them, with a towel, set it aside and let it rise. Make sure your hands are wet. So I'm going to stretch it out into a rectangle. And I'm going to fold it like a letter. And then roll it up like a jelly roll. And then shape it into a bowl. And you grab it and dip it in the seeds. Of course, the seeds are optional. And then get very nice seeds right there. Okay. So these are all formed and ready to rise. Okay, so this bread has been rising for 4 hours, and you can tell it's ready to bake because the indent will stay. It probably could rise a little more, but I think I'm going to bake it. So I can fit 2 in my oven at a time, and the other 2 will just continue to rise. So I've put the Dutch ovens down here, and they're at 500 degrees. They've been in there for half an hour at 500 degrees. And now I'm going to drop this bread into there. So first thing I'm going to do is score it. Open it up so it can expand there. Now I'm just going to drop this right in here. And put the lid on. Okay, so those are all ready to go. So now you're going to change the temperature from, I'm going to put the temperature instead at 450. So I drop it 50 degrees. And we'll leave it in there for 22 minutes. These are just going to continue to rise. I'm not afraid of them overproofing because with sourdough, the rising time is so slow, it's hours, not minutes. So they're going to be fine until the other batch is out. Okay, so this is the final batch. I'm just going to take it out here. So that's all there is to it. So this big crack that's in it is called the ear. And that just shows you how it expanded from you cutting it when you put it in the oven.